When the news of Ozzy Osbourne's death broke on July 22, 2025, fans around the globe mourned the loss of one of rock music's most iconic and polarizing figures. Known as the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy's influence transcended music. He was a cultural phenomenon, a symbol of chaos and endurance, and the soul of a generation. But as tributes poured in, a far more complicated story began to unfold, one involving questions about power, control, and the decisions made during the final, fragile months of his life. At the heart of this unfolding narrative is Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's wife of over 4 decades, his business partner, and the architect of his career resurrection. Long revered for her fierce loyalty and business savvy, Sharon is now facing a federal investigation into the circumstances surrounding her husband's death. What began as an outpouring of grief has turned into a legal and emotional storm, with suspicions mounting over whether Sharon overstepped her role during Ozzy's last days. Ozzy's official cause of death was attributed to complications from Parkinson's disease, which had plagued him for years, along with lingering damage from decades of substance abuse. But insiders, family friends, and members of Ozzy's medical team have since come forward to raise concerns about Sharon's decisions regarding his health care, changes to his will, and the increasing isolation that surrounded Ozzy in the months leading up to his death. Sharon had always been more than just a spouse. From the moment Ozzy was fired from Black Sabbath in 1979, Sharon stepped in, revived his solo career, and became the de facto CEO of the Osbourne brand. Every tour, every record deal, every major appearance bore her signature. That level of control, once celebrated as the glue holding Ozzy's chaotic world together, is now under forensic examination. According to multiple sources, tensions began to rise when Sharon allegedly made unilateral decisions to halt Ozzy's medical treatment. 2 doctors, speaking anonymously, said Ozzy had been considering advanced therapy options in Switzerland, showing interest in experimental treatments that could prolong his life or ease his suffering. But Sharon reportedly rejected that path, arguing it would only extend his pain. Whether that decision reflected Ozzy's own wishes or was a result of Sharon's growing emotional exhaustion remains unclear. Defenders of Sharon say she had reached her limit. The demands of caring for a chronically ill spouse, managing business affairs, and maintaining public appearances had worn her thin. She carried the entire weight of Ozzy's world, one longtime friend said. Eventually, anyone would break. But others close to the family paint a different picture, of a woman increasingly isolated in her decision-making, unwilling to accept outside input, even from Ozzy's adult children. Family members reportedly became concerned when Sharon began limiting visitors and consolidating all medical oversight into a small circle she controlled. Some even claim that Ozzy, in his final weeks, became aware that decisions were being made without his full understanding or approval. The concerns didn't stop at medical care. Just weeks after Ozzy's death, legal experts began scrutinizing changes to his will. Several revisions appeared to have been made during periods when Ozzy was heavily medicated or cognitively impaired. Clauses that once favored a broader distribution of assets among family members had reportedly been narrowed, granting Sharon broader control over financial holdings and memorabilia. While Sharon insists these changes were made with Ozzy's consent, some lawyers close to the estate dispute whether he was in any condition to approve such alterations. Adding fuel to the controversy were reports that key personal items, stage-worn costumes, unreleased recordings, and handwritten lyrics had gone missing after Ozzy's passing. These were more than just collectibles, they were priceless artifacts of music history. Sharon stated that all assets were legally accounted for and stored for preservation. Yet the timing of their disappearance paired with her exclusive control over the estate, raised further questions about transparency. Privately, Sharon has maintained that every decision was made with love and with Ozzy's best interests in mind. In an emotional interview, she said, "I did what I thought was right. I gave him peace. I won't apologize for that." But those words have not silenced her critics. Many wonder whether the weight of responsibility or deeper motivations led to choices that effectively cut Ozzy off from potential lifelines in his final days. Friends close to the couple confirm that their relationship had grown tense. As Ozzy became more physically dependent, Sharon's role morphed into that of caretaker, manager, and gatekeeper. "It wasn't a marriage anymore," one confidant said. "It was a contract, one Sharon controlled down to the hour." Reports suggest that in the final 6 months of his life, Ozzy expressed a desire to continue fighting. A hospice nurse recalled him saying, "I'm not ready to stop yet," just days before certain medications were withdrawn. Legally, Sharon is now the subject of an open investigation. Authorities are exploring 2 primary questions: whether she had the legal authority to unilaterally end Ozzy's treatment, and whether she inappropriately altered the structure of his estate while he was medically compromised. While no charges have been filed, federal investigators have confirmed that inconsistencies in Ozzy's medical records, testimony from caregivers, and unexplained financial adjustments are being actively reviewed. Meanwhile, the public remains deeply divided. Some fans defend Sharon as a grieving wife, unfairly vilified for making impossible choices under crushing pressure. Others see her as a controlling figure who may have placed her own emotional and financial needs ahead of Ozzy's autonomy. His funeral, held in private, with tight security in the English countryside, offered no answers. Instead, it cemented the feeling that much about Ozzy's final chapter remains hidden from view. Social media has been flooded with tributes, yes, but also speculation. Did Ozzy truly choose peace, or was that choice made for him? As the investigation continues, one truth is undeniable. Ozzy Osbourne's death has reopened painful questions about agency, power, and what it means to care for someone at the end of their life. Sharon Osbourne may yet be cleared of wrongdoing. She may be remembered as the only person who stood by Ozzy through everything. But for now, the legacy of his death remains tangled in uncertainty. The Prince of Darkness is gone, but the shadow he leaves behind may take far longer to lift. The Ozzy Osbourne investigation, unanswered questions, and growing suspicion around Sharon Osbourne. When Ozzy Osbourne died on July 22, 2025, at age 76, fans around the world mourned the loss of a rock legend. The Prince of Darkness had lived through decades of excess, battles with addiction, and a long fight with Parkinson's disease. Yet in his final chapter, it wasn't his legacy that dominated headlines. It was the mystery surrounding his death and the role played by his wife and manager, Sharon Osbourne. In the days after his passing, what began as a global outpouring of grief transformed into a deepening investigation. At the center of it stood Sharon, the woman who had built, protected, and managed Ozzy's empire for over 4 decades. But her iron grip on his career, finances, and health care is now under legal and public scrutiny. Investigators are asking a difficult question. Did Sharon Osbourne cross a line in her effort to protect Ozzy? Or did she use her influence to quietly reshape his final wishes for her own benefit? Sharon has repeatedly claimed that every decision she made was with Ozzy's full consent. She described their final months together as a time of peace, love, and mutual understanding. But multiple sources, doctors, close friends, and even family members have presented a more complicated picture. They suggest that as Ozzy's health deteriorated, his ability to make informed decisions also declined. And during that vulnerable period, several of his most personal affairs, including his will, underwent significant, unexplained changes. According to lawyers familiar with Ozzy's previous estate plans, newer versions of his will, allegedly revised during periods of cognitive decline, contained unexpected modifications. Clauses were altered to reduce the roles of some family members, while Sharon's authority over the estate increased. While no outright forgery has been proven, the timing and content of these revisions raised immediate red flags. Some legal experts have questioned whether Ozzy had the mental clarity to approve such changes, or whether he was pressured into doing so. Adding to the suspicion was the disappearance of several valuable items from Ozzy's estate. Rare memorabilia, including vintage tour outfits, handwritten lyrics, and unreleased recordings, were reported missing shortly after his death. Sharon claimed that many of these were either stored or held privately for sentimental reasons. But fans, collectors, and even some family members questioned whether these pieces were quietly sold, misplaced, or hidden for financial gain. Throughout their marriage, Sharon had been both wife and manager, often praised for rescuing Ozzy's career from the brink. But that same dual role also gave her near total control over every facet of his life. Financial decisions were made unilaterally. Estate matters were handled without family input. Ozzy's children, Jack, Kelly, and Amy, were reportedly excluded from discussions surrounding the latest will, and were given little say in how their father's legacy would be handled after his passing. While all three children were included in the inheritance, none were granted authority in managing the estate. This lack of transparency raised the question, did Ozzy intend for Sharon to wield this level of control, or was he manipulated during a period of vulnerability? Close friends of the family described Sharon's approach as meticulous, even ruthless. Her business acumen helped build a global brand, from music and merchandise to television stardom. But some insiders suggest that her desire to maintain control may have come at the cost of openness and shared decision-making. As Ozzy's health declined, so did his ability to question or challenge the choices being made on his behalf. Theories about Sharon's motives have divided the public. Some believe she made painful choices out of love, trying to spare Ozzy from prolonged suffering. Others see her actions as those of a woman pushed to her emotional and physical limits. Caring for a chronically ill spouse while also running a business empire left Sharon isolated and exhausted. Could she have chosen to end Ozzy's treatment not just for his benefit, but for her own relief? Yet darker theories have emerged as well. Critics suggest that Sharon may have acted out of financial interest. With Ozzy's medical care becoming increasingly expensive and emotionally taxing, some argue that Sharon may have decided, consciously or not, that it was time to let go. Could she have accelerated his death to stabilize the family brand, reclaim control, and shield herself from the chaos of a long, drawn-out decline? Their relationship, long celebrated as a symbol of rock and roll resilience, had reportedly strained in Ozzy's final years. He became more dependent on Sharon, not just emotionally, but physically and financially. Caretakers have since come forward describing moments when Ozzy expressed resistance to halting his treatment. One nurse recalled him saying, "I'm not done yet," just days before medications were withdrawn. It's unclear whether Ozzy had a true say in his end-of-life decisions, or if Sharon ultimately made those calls on her own. Complicating matters further were the reports of missing financial documents and altered contracts that surfaced weeks after Ozzy's passing. According to legal advisors who had worked with him for years, certain agreements had been revised or replaced without their input. Although Sharon has denied any wrongdoing and continues to cooperate with the investigation, The lack of oversight has intensified public suspicion. In interviews following Ozzy's death, Sharon has maintained a calm and composed demeanor. When asked whether she had any regrets, she responded, "I did what I thought was best for the man I loved. That's all I can say." But many find that answer unsatisfying, especially given the growing number of inconsistencies surrounding Ozzy's final days. The investigation remains active. Authorities are examining medical records, legal documents, and testimony from those who were close to Ozzy in his final weeks. No charges have been filed, and Sharon has not been officially accused of wrongdoing. Still, the cloud of suspicion lingers. Was Sharon Osbourne, a devoted wife, doing her best under unbearable circumstances? Or was she a figure of control who, faced with the collapse of her partner's body and career, made decisions that blurred the line between love and self-interest? The world may never get a definitive answer, but one thing is certain. Ozzy Osbourne's final chapter is now as complex, haunting, and controversial as his life. Behind the curtain of glam and glory lies a mystery still unfolding, and the echoes of that final song have yet to fade. Ozzy Osbourne's final days. Sharon Osbourne. Under scrutiny. In the wake of Ozzy Osbourne's death on July 22, 2025, at age 76, a wave of mourning was quickly followed by a rising tide of suspicion. Central to the controversy is Sharon Osbourne, Ozzy's wife, manager, and longtime gatekeeper of his career and personal affairs. What began as a tribute to a rock legend has become a federal investigation into whether Sharon's control during his final months crossed ethical or legal lines. Concerns have mounted over Sharon's decisions regarding Ozzy's end-of-life care, particularly her choice to cease treatment. Family members claim they were not consulted, nor involved in revisions to Ozzy's will. Sharon controlled everything, from the medication to the legal paperwork, one family source said. It didn't feel like a collective effort. Further adding to suspicions was the disappearance of valuable memorabilia, including iconic costumes and unreleased recordings. Sharon has insisted all items are accounted for and denies any wrongdoing, maintaining she acted purely out of love and with Ozzy's consent. "I only tried to give him the peace he asked for," she stated. Federal authorities have widened the investigation to include Sharon's financial management, estate control, and whether Ozzy had the mental capacity to approve critical decisions before his death. Interviews with family, former staff, and legal advisors are ongoing. Though no criminal charges have been filed, the probe continues. What remains is a haunting question. Did Sharon act as a devoted wife overwhelmed by responsibility, or did she overstep in her pursuit of control? As the investigation unfolds, Ozzy's legacy hangs in the balance, shadowed by grief, unanswered questions, and a family still searching for closure.